The word Renaissance means rebirth. This is a time period in Europe where culture is being reborn, learning is being reborn, the arts are being reborn, renewed. It's a time period where man is becoming more and more urban, more and more city-based. This will be one of the trends we see throughout the school year. Men leaving the countryside, moving to cities. That's where the money is. That's where the power is. That's where the influence is. That's where the trends start. That's where the artists are. That's where the publishers are. We are also becoming more and more secular during the Renaissance, more and more worldly, with more interest outside of the church, which is reflected in our literature and our art, which we'll see in a couple of lessons. It's also a time period of an age of recovery where Europe is getting over the Black Plague, it's getting over the Crusades, it's getting over a series of wars. It's also a time period where there's a higher regard for the value of the individual human. The medieval era often focused on the negative side of man, or what theologians would call our sin nature. The Renaissance has a tendency to focus on the good aspects of humanity, what we can accomplish when we set our minds to it. So we're really starting to see the creation of modern society during the Renaissance. Now, part of that is because of the literature, like the book The Prince, written by the man on the screen there, Machiavelli. Right? His book was about how to get and keep power. But what made it so different than anything else is when he talked about morality versus practicality in politics, Machiavelli always says, go with the practical, go with what works as opposed to what's morally right. To him, the prince and the state is the same thing. So if it's good for the prince, then it's good for the state or the government or the country. So for instance, you look at some quotes from his book. He said a prince should not deviate, stray from what is good if that is possible, but he should know how to do evil if that is necessary. Hence, a wise leader cannot and should not keep his word when keeping it is not to his advantage. So a prince need not have all the good qualities, but it is most essential that he appear to have them. So for Machiavelli, it's not important necessarily for the prince to be moral. It's important for him to appear to be moral. Right? Basically, don't get caught doing it. The ends justifies the means. So to put it in a non-political context, maybe an athlete is using HGH to get an advantage. Just don't get caught. Or maybe a student is cheating on the test. Just don't get caught. Right? You need to appear to be good, but you need to know how to do evil when necessary. Now, politicians have been doing this ever since there's been politicians, ever since there's been kings and princes, but Machiavelli is putting it out in writing and trying to justify politicians doing what's practical rather than what is moral. Now, something that's very different from Renaissance society and modern society is reasons for marriage. We have a tendency to think you get married out of love, which from a historical perspective is pretty new. That's only been around a couple of centuries. For most of human history and most cultures, particularly the Renaissance, you did not get married for love. You got married out of business. You got married to strengthen family ties. Marriage was literally a contract. You can see this in this painting on the screen where there's a man in the left literally writing the contract, the marriage contract, during the ceremony. It was a business proposition. If you end up loving each other, that was just bonus. That was not necessary. That's not the point of marriage during the Renaissance. It was a business deal, as I said, where the husband would receive a dowry from the wife's family, a gift either of money or land or both. Right? We even have a leftover of this in the modern era. That's why oftentimes the bride's family pays for the wedding. That's a leftover from the dowry system. So this idea that you got married out of love and affection and this whole Romeo and Juliet business, that's bogus. That's just not how it was. You ended up loving each other. That was just extra, but it wasn't necessary. It wasn't part of the deal, so to speak.